Today I'm going to talk about the LA fires and improving your mental performance, things you can do immediately. How we improve our mental performance is counterintuitive to what we think. Definitely opposite of what our culture has been telling us or pushing us to do. And that's something to be aware of when you're going through significant mental stress or pressure, or you have many more decisions to make at any given time. This is something I really want you to take seriously. It's not a luxury to think about it. It's meaningful and important, because I've known people who have had too much on their mind and allowed their brain to go too many places at once during critical situations, dropped the ball, and lost their job. So if you want to really use your brain well, knowing these things are really going to help. This is Lucy Gable, integrative leadership coach and trainer, author, speaker, and professor at the George Washington University School of Medicine grad program. And this is Leadership, Life, Health, and Happiness. So it's the end of January 2025, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's been going on over here in LA. So many of you have reached out asking me if I'm okay, if my home is okay, and so I just want to thank you for caring and for taking the time to connect with me. We are okay. And I know that's more than a lot of people can say. It's not that we haven't been affected. We were surrounded on 3 sides by fires to the west, north, and east of us. But our house was thankfully not in an area that the fires reached. At the same time, I'm feeling incredible sadness for everyone in the neighboring communities who have gone through so much worse, and people who are still today trying to figure out what their life is going to look like. All of us are grateful for being alive today. Most people listening in on this aren't from the LA area, and some are not even from the US. Wherever you're from, I'm very appreciative of you listening to this podcast and for being loyal listeners. Today's topic, improving mental performance, stems from my experiences here in Los Angeles in the last few weeks. The last episode, I talked about calming the mind. I got a lot of thanks for that last episode, and I absolutely made that for anyone who needed it. And I know that a lot of people need it right now, not only in LA, but everywhere. And believe me, I also made it because that was on my mind. When I'm stressed, I tend to hold my breath. And for 3 weeks, I was catching myself not breathing much at all, breathing very shallowly, or even holding my breath at times. And I had to remember to take some deep breaths. One of the best things you can do for yourself, if this kind of thing happens to you, is to spend some time just breathing and focusing on your breath every day, so that your body and brain connect to the breath, so that you can remind yourself what it's like to breathe. So I started doing this kind of breath work in the morning and at night. And as you'll hear in that episode, you don't really need to do a lot of it. You just need to do maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and it'll take you far. And then throughout the day, when you notice you're not breathing well, you want to breathe in through your nose, fill your diaphragm with air, and exhale fully a few times. And it doesn't matter if you're in a crisis situation or not. We all can use practices that calm our minds. The Neuro Leadership Institute finds that the most energy-consuming tasks of the brain are memorizing information, that is, putting information into your memory banks, remembering information, that means bringing information out of your memory banks, understanding information when it's being given to you, making decisions, and inhibiting, that is, not doing something that's your first inclination to do. And when we have one of these things going on at all times, or several of these things going on all day, our brain gets depleted of energy. Our brain gets depleted of energy no matter what. Our brain has a finite amount of energy throughout the day, just like our body does. And that's something to be aware of so that you can prioritize things well. But also, it's something to be aware of when you're going through significant mental stress or pressure, or you have many more decisions to make at any given time. Just knowing this concept is going to help you out in a big way. And if you want to really use your brain well, then you can prioritize what's most important to focus on at this time. So how can we improve our mental performance immediately, like with the snap of a finger? Realize what the mental priority is and go there. In the first weeks of January, I had several really large proposals to write. They were top of my focus. And then we got word of the fires. And so that had to become my priority focus. Priority focus being, how are we going to survive this? Our power was going out at undetermined times, and it was shutting everything down at times where my cell phone had maybe 20% battery, where my computer wasn't fully charged. And at the same time, I was able to see fire on the other side of the mountain from us. And of course, as you probably know, we were having extremely high winds the first days of the fire. Those winds were so fast. People that have lived in the LA area all their lives, let's say 40, 50 years, told me they've never known winds of this speed. So it's not like, oh, this is the regular Santa Ana wind kind of a thing. These were intense. While I was looking out my window at the fire in the mountains, the wind was blowing so hard that my windows were bending. So on the East Coast, these would be hurricane winds basically, and there would have been rain with it. The first few days I'm wondering, how are we going to get light? Where are the candles? Where are my spare power chargers? We didn't have a go bag. We were getting alerts on our phones saying you may have to evacuate, prepare. And so I was thinking, what do we need to bring with us? And you can't pack all of your valuables, obviously. You need to have a bag, though, that's ready to go, that has what you need for a few days. And then you're thinking about, where would we go? How would we get there? At the same time, our area was not under the duress that so many other areas were. And so our power did go back on, and then it went off again. The fire emergency did die down, and then it came back up again. So during about a 2-week time span, we had 3 alerts, and we had a number of power outages that lasted for hours, if not half days, and into the night. So that was seriously taking up a large part of my mind. We were thinking about, what will we do if a variety of situations happen? And we were also thinking about, and how do we stay here now and do the things we need to do in the present? At the same time, I was also thinking about deadlines that I had to meet, and fully aware that, of course I could tell people that this is happening and they do understand. At the same time, there's a large part of the population that isn't going through this. And as much as I can, I want to meet my deadlines and stay true to my word. These proposals were, basically my first introduction to some people who were going to be making the decisions about work that I have in 2025. That was hard for me to tell you, just to let you know. That was stressful just recalling it, and it's just a little picture. So to circle back to how that affected me, by the end of the first week, and surely by the end of the 3rd week, my brain was tired. Even though I didn't feel physically tired, I was mentally exhausted. Science has also found that our brain can truly only focus on one mental activity at a time. So when I say mental activity, I mean you're thinking about something. Maybe you're problem solving, or maybe you're listening to someone. We can do something physical while we do something mental. That is something we know the brain can do. We can exercise while we listen to a podcast. We can drive while we sing. Those are 2 separate things. But the physical thing has to be something that doesn't require a lot of thought. That's how we can do those 2 things at once. This is something I really want you to take seriously. It's not a luxury to think about it. It's meaningful and important because I've known people who have had too much on their mind and allowed their brain to go too many places at once during critical situations, dropped the ball, and lost their job. My husband was on travel the third week that we were into these fires, and we received another evacuation warning that day, and I was making dinner, and I also was working on one of the major proposals. I was making this meal that was going to be 2 or 3 meals, but I did also need to eat that night, and it had gotten late. That was another thing. Time had just slipped away from me. I was involved in my project, and it was probably 9 p.m. as I was making this food, and I also didn't think it was going to take me as long as it did. If you saw my recipe on Instagram or Facebook, this is the soup, the udon soup that I made that week. And things just weren't being timed well because I wasn't focusing on the timing really well. And I went to warm up the soup because I was getting ready to make my own bowl. I was getting ready to actually eat. It's like 9 o'clock. I'm wondering if I need to evacuate. And I'm also trying to finish a proposal on time. I was thinking about some things I needed to say and how to word them, but the dinner I was making had several moving parts. So I have a big bowl of soup that I'm putting in the microwave to warm up, and I needed to test it to see if it was warm enough. So I opened the door, brought it out of the microwave, and I went to take a sip of this big udon bowl of soup just to see if I needed to stick it back in. Well, the microwave door starts swinging back towards the bowl. I probably would have noticed it, if I was thinking about where I was at the time. But that door swung back and hit the bowl, and the bowl went into my face. The soup went on my face, down my shirt, all over the floor. Instead of eating relatively quickly thereafter, I had to put everything down, change my shirt, wash my face, and grab the mop and clean the floor. As we try to do multiple things at once, and we try to rush through them, it ends up that we don't get anything done well. And I know I would have gotten done faster if I was just focusing on what I was doing at the time. It's not our intuitive thought that if we slow down and do this thing that we're doing and pay full attention, we will actually get it done better and faster. But when you test it, you're going to find out what I'm saying if you haven't already. At another time, I was in the middle of writing, and I went out to get a glass of water. I put the water underneath the water dispenser in the fridge, and I was alarmed by how hard the wind was blowing. And I saw the bird feeder. We've got a hummingbird feeder out on our balcony, and it's glass. And it made me think about whether I should bring it in, because if that glass ball blows off the hook, it could hit someone and hurt someone. It could break all over the lawn. And of course, I don't want either of those things to happen. So I walked outside to take the bird feeder in, and I noticed there were 2 hummingbirds sitting there drinking as if their life depends on it, which it did. And I didn't want to take it away from them at that moment. So I decided to come back later and check on it. Went back inside to get my water from the fridge. And in the amount of time that I'd walked out and contemplated what to do with that feeder and came back in, the filtered water dispenser had filled up my cup and proceeded to overflow my cup. The water had gone onto the floor, across the kitchen, and into the living room. I had a flood. So I needed to stop everything I was doing and grab the mop. These were just 2 examples, but little things like this were happening the whole 3 weeks. I was so distracted. And yes, if this was something that happened to you, you might be thinking, what's going on with my brain? But thank goodness I knew what was going on. I knew I was distracted. Of course, there was that little voice in my head saying, why are you allowing yourself to be distracted? You should be better than this, blah, 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 blah. But then we have to give ourselves grace. It's like, hey, there are some big things happening right now. Be forgiving. Be forgiving. And there's that exercise that you can do, that I often do, where you basically imagine that a best friend is going through this same scenario. And you think about what you would say to that friend. We would never say to our best friend, you are so stupid. what is wrong with you, right? In fact, in this scenario, I would probably say to a friend, oh my gosh, of course you're distracted. And I would try to have that friend be a little kinder to herself and calm down a little bit, and even recognize that during these times of high stress, we need a little bit more energy replenishing activity. There's one thing I want to add to the end of this episode, and that is something else that will unnecessarily suck up your mental energy and take away the bandwidth that you have to be productive and really do well at whatever you're focused on. And that is self-criticism and self-punishment. It's one thing to want to do your best. It's another to almost hate yourself for not doing your best. That self-punishment takes up space and energy in your brain where other more useful, beneficial, and productive thoughts really should be. It adds to the mental energy that you are using up as you go through your day. And I don't know about you, but I'd say that's not the best use of energy. It's definitely not productive. And in fact, I would say it's counterproductive. That's something that I've been dealing with for a really, really, really long time. And I think that a lot of people know where I'm coming from. And how I let that go was when I finally realized that I was going to do my best no matter what. I was going to do my best with or without self-punishment. And even though I've gotten much better, I'm still working on it. I did an episode on that, episode 22, how to deal with criticism from others and yourself. So if this is something you're interested in diving into, by all means, check that one out. When your brain is tired, if you've had this pattern in the past, and if you've had it for a long time, you will fall back into it. And of course, yes, that's something that happened to me in these last few weeks as I was messing up because I wasn't focusing well, then I was getting angry at myself. But one thing I can say though is, because I've worked on that for a while, I can notice when it starts happening and let it go. And I've created that mental pathway, that if-then pathway. If you find yourself beating yourself up, let it go, because it's going to make you more tired, because it's not useful, because it is wasteful energy. And the more you do that, the more you train your brain to do it well, and the less you find yourself in that situation. All of these are mental tools and exercises that really help during intense situations. It takes some time and it takes practice to remember to do them in the first place. But we are all works in progress. We're all moving forward at our own timeline. So hopefully you'll take a few of these things with you and work on them now so that you can be really good at them when the stress hits, and you'll be able to use them to your advantage. How we improve our mental performance is counterintuitive to what we think. Definitely opposite of what our culture has been telling us or pushing us to do, which is multiple things at once, fast. You can still be fast. Oh, I'm all about speed. But test it for yourself in terms of how fast you can be when you focus on one thing at a time and allow yourself to really be present to that thing. And if you find yourself beating yourself up, let it go, because it is wasteful energy. And that's how you can flip the switch in a snap of a finger and improve your mental performance. If this episode made you think about anything, write a comment and let me know, or give it a thumbs up or 5 stars. I always love hearing from listeners, and you know how to connect. You can find me at lucygable.com. This is Lucy Gable. I'll talk to you next time.